Thanks.
Let's go.
Let's go.
Hey guys, we are here. This is Başak.
Hey guys, here we are. This is Kate. Hello, Başak.
Hello, Kate. How are you?
I am very, very well. And you?
Yes, I'm well and bright in this Friday morning, and I'm bubbling up. As I was telling you before, this is so exciting. In yoga circles, we always talk about a couple of keywords, right? Karma being one of them, Dharma being another one.
Yep.
And today, I am so excited that we have one of our teachers joining us to talk about this very interesting and deep subject of Dharma. I'd like to introduce Kaustubha. Kaustubha, would you please turn your camera on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Haribol.
Good to see you. Good to be here.
So lovely to see you. I just wanted to say how I know of Kaustubha Das. Kaustubha Das I know him through our teacher Yogi Charu.
Yeah.
And he's one of the principal Bhakti teachers. And I've actually been with Kaustubha and Raghunath, his partner, his co-host at Wisdom of the Sages podcast in India 2 years ago, I think it was. And I did the wisdom training with both of them, and they are just incredible teachers. And I'm just so honored that you made time to be here today.
I'm happy to. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you. Before we start our subject, I want to do a little bio read here. It's going to be very brief and not really giving justice to who Kaustubha Das is, but Kaustubha Das serves as a senior educator of the Bhakti Center in New York City. And he is, as I mentioned, the co-host of the Wisdom of the Sages Yoga podcast, which has been ranked #1 in the world on Apple Podcast in the category of religion and spirituality. He has a special way of making the teachings and practices of yoga very approachable and relevant. He has practiced Bhakti Yoga philosophy and meditation for over 35 years in Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition. Kaustubha Das was initiated as a Vaishnava Brahmana, teacher or priest, in 1990. And between the ages of 21 and 34, he lived as a Hindu monk, traveling and studying in ashrams in both India and America. Is that good enough?
That'll work.
Have you done anything since then?
So much.
Well, I suppose the podcast is one of the latest things, but there's always new things coming up.
There are.
Yeah.
Great.
There are, yes. And, clearly this path is very dharmic for you, Kaustubha. And before we delve into our own questions about Dharma, I am just curious if you could take a minute and share with us, how did you know this path was your Dharma?
Oh. Well, when I was a teenager, I was searching, that search, it went through, I suppose it was just a search for meaning in life and purpose in life, which you could define as Dharma, I suppose. And it went through different phases, political phases, I would say. And I was growing up in New York City, so I was exposed to a lot. And, I had freedom even as a teenager to kind of search, and meet all kinds of people. And, I suppose I was being disappointed in different ways along that path. And but eventually, like even within my own core group of friends, some of them had picked up books like Bhagavad Gita and Upanishads and so on. So it was through reading those books that they were just really resonating with me. And by the time I was 21, I was kind of getting fully into it. Let's say internally, I was saying, you're asking me how did I know it was my path, and I suppose it just felt true. It was answering my questions about life, and the practices that were being recommended felt meaningful and true, and I suppose that's where you start. And that led to one sannyasi one monk inviting me to travel with him when I was 21, and I kind of left my world behind at that point, and disappeared from New York City for a good 13 years, and that faith that I had invested in this path was grew as I learned more and practiced more.
When you left with that monk, that decision to do that, was that like, something that took you a long time to come to, or was that something that it kind of was sparked and you said, this is it?
I was ready, I think, at that point. It was about 6 months prior to that, where, you see, I was reading these books, I don't know exactly how long it was, but maybe 6 months to a year, I was reading them where they were really resonating with me. And my friends were actually, in one way or another, practicing this path of Krishna Bhakti. But I wasn't quite ready to say, this is my path, this is me. And then one evening, another friend had invited me. I had been invited to a friend's home. It's just a tiny apartment on the Lower East Side of New York. And my friends are just like real New York City street kids. They weren't like what you would maybe picture in your mind as like Eastern spiritual seekers or anything.
Holy.
Yeah. But somehow they had this interest, and so I went to my friend's home because he was inviting some speaker over, and another monk this monk walked in, and he sat down with maybe just 6 or 7 of us, on the floor in this tiny apartment on the Lower East Side, and spoke to us. And it was immediately after that talk, like, in other words, stepping out onto the sidewalk after that talk, I was convinced this is it. I should follow this path. So I began practicing more seriously at that point, and it was about 6 months later where I got that invitation. And I think I was ready for it at that point. I was eager to try to go deeper into it, and that seemed like a great way to do it.
Beautiful. Yeah, there's many ways that we all turn into spirituality, and yours is clearly seeking truth and being curious. That's
Yes,
beautiful.
a lot of curiosity. It was largely intellectual. I wanted answers.
Yeah.
I wanted answers that were consistent and that made sense. And in the Bhagavad Gita, especially, and similar texts, I was finding them.
This sounds so familiar, right, Kate? We always talk about that. I think for us too, some people go to spirituality out of, I guess, distress, or, out of, other reasons. But I think we are sharing that intellectual curiosity started probably this. But how do we, for everybody listening, what is Dharma? And how do we understand our Dharma? Is it something that we discover, we choose?
Okay,
Curious to hear.
that's a very good question. And the term Dharma, obviously, it's a Sanskrit term, and it's widely used. When we look at the yoga, the world of yoga, or you could say the world of Vedanta, or just Eastern philosophy, because Dharma, of course, is used and spoken about in Buddhism as well. You're going to get a variety of explanations and understandings of what it means. But I'll speak to it a bit broadly, but also more specifically in terms of the Vaishnava path, the Krishna Bhakti path that I follow. So literally, Dharma means that which sustains something. And so a lot of times when we speak about Dharma, maybe on the more, well, you see, it's speaking about how the universe is sustained. It's speaking on different levels. How is the universe sustained? And in the ancient Vedic literature, you have this idea that everything in the universe is being provided by the devas and the devis, the gods and the goddesses, and the rain is coming from the god of the rain, and the sun is coming from the god of the sun, and the river is the goddess, river. And we're indebted to them. And our indebtedness should be recognized and repaid through some type of sacrifice, through some kind of, either through ritual or through a way of living by which we live in harmony with with the gods and goddesses and with nature and all of that. And so that's Dharma, right? And through that, everything is sustained properly. And without it, things kind of break down and become chaotic. So like there's this universal type of Dharma, but there's also like the internal, or the, like, let's say the individual or societal, and then individual, like within society, there are different dharmas, prescribed roles that people can play. So whatever your occupation is, that is, you know, there's dharma that goes with that. In other words, there's codes to live by according to what your occupation is, or what your stage in life is, as a young person, as a married person, as a retired person. What are the codes that you live by that help us sustain, you know, sustain harmony and order in society, but also sustain like goodness in society, you know, sustain like a healthy society where we're all growing. You know? And then there's also individual dharma, you know, what it is that I practice, and what is it, the deepest interest that I have, the deepest spiritual interest that I have. There's maybe my personal sadhana, my personal spiritual practices, my prayers, my meditations, and so on. So Dharma is operating on all these levels. But let me share this, and this is something that is deeply spoken about in the lineage that I come from, and I think this may be where it starts to get real practical, is the sages in the Vaishnava or the Bhakti, Krishna Bhakti tradition that I follow, they speak of two types of Dharma, okay? And there are Sanskrit terms for it, but I'll keep it simple. You can say there's temporary Dharma or relative Dharma, and then there is eternal Dharma, okay? And so temporary or relative Dharma means, here Dharma means there are roles that we play in life, that we have at one point in our life, and then some time passes, external circumstances change, and then we let go of that Dharma, we let go of that role, right? The role comes with duties that we must perform, what's expected of us in that role. You know, I may be a mother or a father, a husband or a wife. I wasn't before, and then I am, and then maybe in the future I'm not. But while I'm in that role, then there's the Dharma of being a husband, or the Dharma of being a wife, or the Dharma of being a father or a mother. Those codes to live by help sustain a family, a marriage. But they also help us grow. The idea is they're designed in a way to help the individual grow. So that's temporary dharmas. Mm-hmm. And then they speak of this eternal dharma. Now the temporary dharma, again, it's relative. It's according to time and circumstance. And it's also individual in the sense that my dharma may not be your dharma. But the eternal dharma they speak of is something that is always there, not only through the different stages of life or different circumstances, but through all our different lifetimes that we may pass through, you know, and ultimately in our eternal existence. And it's also something that's not individual, it's something that's shared by every living being. Whether that living being is in a human body, a male, female, old, young, or even other species, or you know, wherever there's life. The spark of life has this eternal dharma. And that eternal dharma, we could say, essentially, is loving service. That by nature, every living being is designed with this dharma. I'll share a story, but is there a question, Kate? Or
well, I have a billion questions, but just before you finish the story, there's a sense of, and I don't know the right word, of you can control or you make decisions about your personal dharma
choose,
choice.
Yeah.
But in terms of the larger version, how is that sustained? By just us individually doing that, or is that just sustained by itself, or that created? Or
in one sense, it's sustained by the design of existence, right? But we may be out of touch with that. So the question is, how do we sustain our awareness of it? And that's where the practices of yoga come into play, to help reawaken that awareness that by nature, this is bhakti yoga, right? By nature, I'm designed to serve with love. And in the bhakti traditions, the idea is the central object of love is God. But by connecting with that God, like the root, who is the root of all existence, you naturally connect with every living being. So when your love goes to that center or that root, it's like pouring water on the root of a plant. Your love goes out to every living being, like when you pour water on the root, it goes to every leaf.
That's beautiful.
But this story, you know, when I was a young monk, a few years in, I suppose, I was in a place called Navadvip or Mayapur in West Bengal. It's on the very beautiful holy place on the bank of the Ganges River, the Ganga. And I was up early one morning, the sun was just rising, and I was walking down a road where most people were still asleep. You know, there was just kind of like the neighborhood was just beginning to wake up. Not many people were out. And I got to the end of the road, and a man approached me, Indian man, and he wanted to sell me a drum. So he's asking, I've got a drum, would you like to buy it? I was like, no, thank you. And then I suppose he just, through hearing my voice or my accent, he said, where are you from? I said, I'm from New York. He said, you're American? I said, yes. He said, could you help me? I said, I don't know. What do you need help with? And he said, I have something from America and I don't know how to use it. I need some help. I said, okay. And so his home was right there on the side of the road, and it was essentially like just one small room. And he brought me in, and then he closed the shutters, like something very, he had something very, I suppose he didn't want his neighbors to know what he had. And the room was small, like basically enough room for like a bed and just a little space around it. So I sat down on the floor, and he reached under the bed and slid out a cardboard box. And he said, I have a heater from America, and I was wondering if you could help me learn how to use it. I was like, okay, let's take a look. So he opened up the box, and I looked inside it, and it wasn't a heater. It was a waffle iron. Okay.
Oh, that's great.
And I realized in that moment that perhaps he'd been cheated in some way. Maybe someone sold him a waffle iron saying it was a heater. And certainly he probably plugged it in and felt it getting hot, but didn't feel the room, getting warm. And I had to explain to him that what a waffle iron is, and that this isn't a heater. And he was obviously disappointed. But the reason I bring this story up is because a waffle iron is designed with a particular purpose. It's designed to make waffles. When it's making waffles, you could say that it's situated in its dharma. It's doing what it's designed to do. It knows its purpose. It's fulfilling its purpose. And when it's not, you could use it to try to heat a room, and I suppose it's going to heat the room a little bit, but it's not really rightly situated. And so our dharma means getting rightly situated. There are temporary relative ways. If I'm a mother now, then I need to be all that a mother is meant to be. And I need to adjust to that role and embrace the codes that come with that. Right? And at some point I may let that go. But here's the key, that the temporary dharmas, the relative dharmas that we embrace for some time in life, these sages, they saw them as related to the eternal dharma. That yes, they create a stability and sustain us on a social level, but they're also meant on the individual level to awaken our awareness of our eternal dharma. Within Hinduism and within yoga and within the Vedic culture, there's the faith that dharma is taught through these ancient yogic texts, and that if it's followed sincerely and carefully and with good guidance and good understanding, then the temporary dharmas that we practice will keep stability on a social level, and they'll also awaken this deeper, eternal Dharma. That is really the goal of all yoga, or the goal of all Dharma, for that to arise, one's awareness of that to arise again.
That makes a lot of
So
sense.
this brings a question for me. You know, I think in our society right now, this Dharma, the word Dharma is used a lot for someone's profession. And I
Okay.
get these
Yes.
questions all the time, and I work with people. Am I doing my Dharma? Is
Yes.
it this? Is this work my Dharma? Right? How do I know this is my Dharma?
Yeah.
But listening to your explanation, and when you talk in the context of, you know, loving service, right?
Yeah.
And if there is a design already in this world, am I supposed to understand that whatever it is that is showing up in my life, if I can open my heart and really do it with this service intention, could be my Dharma?
Oh,
Or is
okay.
it that I need to just say, no, no, that's not it. I need to find something else.
So this is, last March, or this past March, I was asked to, I attended a festival. It was like a 5-week festival in Rishikesh. And it would bring in maybe 700 or 800 people every evening for kirtan and prasadam, food was served. And there was just a handful, maybe 3 or 4 booths also to engage with people. And I would teach in the morning, and in the evening I would do a question and answer booth. And so I probably, over the course of that month, every night doing it, I took hundreds of questions.
Wow.
But I think probably the most often asked question was some form of what you're bringing up here. How do I know what's
Yes.
my Dharma?
Very
Right?
mundane question, yes.
Well, no, not mundane, but
No.
very relevant, very relevant question.
Yeah.
And what you just mentioned, Vasak, in what sense you got to the heart of something that's really important in my mind to understand. But in order to connect it, I have to step back just a little bit, okay, and fill in some ideas. In the tradition that I practice, this Krishna Bhakti Vaishnava tradition, we understand that all of the Vedic literature, all of these sacred texts, they speak on different levels. Sometimes that's confusing, and it's hard to figure out what is this all saying. But these sages have kind of helped us understand that these teachings are meant for people on this level of understanding. If some people just see the world as meant for their enjoyment, and they don't recognize any higher power. And then there's teachings to bring people a step above that, say you can enjoy this. You may look at life as the purpose of it is to enjoy this world, but you could do it by being dharmic, by recognizing all the gifts that you're being given, and being dutiful in life, recognizing that this law of karma is in effect. And if you learn to live in harmony with that and be a good person, be a generous person, be a dutiful person, be a respectful person, then you're going to enjoy this world more. So if your goal is to enjoy this world, then do it this way. And then another level of teachings comes up that says there's more to life than enjoying this world. The enjoyments of this world come and then they go, and then you feel pain. Try to go deeper. Try to understand that the temporary roles that you have and you embrace in this life, and the results that come from your performing those actions, come and go, but there is a nature that you have underneath that's beyond all of that. And if you let go of these temporary roles, even walk away from, this is where renunciation comes in. Someone would walk away from all of these temporary roles and go off up into the mountains and say, I'm beyond that now. Now I'm going within. So that's another level of teaching. And then there's still one higher level of teaching, and this is sometimes called the Parodharma, the highest Dharma. And that is rediscovering that love that we have for God and for everything. And that's called bhakti. So that goes it went from karma to jnana to bhakti, 3 levels that these teachings are speaking on. But on that first level, though, that's the level where it speaks a lot about your occupation, right? And it describes like 4 different, you see, this is something that has become warped into what they call the caste system now, which
Right.
is really like any insightful thing can be misused and misapplied.
Unfortunately.
And a lot of people have trouble with it because it's been used as a tool of exploitation. But if you really understand it, you'll see that it was actually designed for the exact opposite. It was designed as a way of curbing exploitation. So it identifies 3 types of leaders in society: the economic leaders, the political leaders, and the spiritual leaders. And the idea is that the spiritual leaders should be advising the political leaders and the business leaders so well that they understand that it's in their interest not to exploit, but to protect. It's in their interest to serve those that are under them, or those that work for them, or those that they govern. And so the whole thing was designed in that way. And then within the rest of society, there's so many varieties of occupations. But in one sense, understanding those 4, each of those 4 have certain duties and codes to live by. The Bhagavad Gita, it starts with Arjuna struggling with his having to carry out the code of the political leader. The political leader is not just political, but the warrior.
Warrior. Okay.
Right? Yeah, that he had always lived by the code of the warrior.
Protection, right?
It means, protection, in that I'm ready and willing. You see, the privilege of the warrior is that they can tax the citizens and they can rule. But along with that, the responsibility means I must protect. And so when he was called upon to fight, to protect, it was such a difficult situation for him because there were men on the other side that he had the deepest love for. And so the position that he found himself in was a real struggle. And he had a breakdown where he couldn't carry out his dharma. I will not fight, he said. And then the whole Bhagavad Gita comes out. And it's just so brilliant how everything's laid out there. But what I wanted to get to, Basak, in terms of your question is, those rules and regulations and codes to live by, they're important. But the bhakti yogis, when the teachings get brought to that level, they recognize the most important thing is to develop this love. And if these codes are serving that, then they're very important and they're embraced. And sometimes we may even find that carrying out the rules and the regulations and the codes may somehow not be serving that purpose. You understand? Somehow they may be in general good, but in this specific case, they're not serving the purpose. And in that case, you let go of the lower dharma for the higher dharma. The higher dharma is more important. Whatever is going to help us develop that love is going to be the most important thing. That's why there's commonly a struggle between tradition and innovation, you could say.
Yeah.
Right? Like, tradition is important, but sometimes the purpose of the tradition isn't serving anymore. Under these circumstances, we need to adjust, we need to innovate so that the true purpose is met.
Right.
And
Connect to Buddhi, right? That's why we have
sorry?
this, we need to connect that love to Buddhi so that we can act from that intelligent place rather than
That's right.
mind-driven.
That's what intelligence needs to be applied. Not that we just follow tradition blindly, but that we
Right.
can recognize, is the tradition serving the higher purpose? And so what in our tradition, what we consider to be the conclusive teaching is the text called the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is 18,000 verses. And there, divine love becomes very clearly identified as the culmination of all the teachings. And there we find sometimes the dharmas are turned upside down. Sometimes the tradition gets turned upside down. Like, for instance, we see from the lineages of the demons come great saints who give great teachings. You know, sometimes the young people. So yes, yeah, and Prahlad, not just because he was born in the demon lineage, he was also young, and he's instructing his parents, where normally the Dharma is the other way, that the parents instruct the kids, right? And perhaps one of the most telling stories there, because in one sense, nothing is more glorified in terms of these temporary dharmas in the earlier teachings of the Vedas than the Brahmanas, right? The spiritual teachers are highly, highly respected. Right. The greatest sin to possibly commit is to kill a Brahmana, you know, and everyone, including the powerful kings, they bow down and they accept the instructions of the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas, they're given super high level respect. And that's maintained even throughout Srimad Bhagavatam. But to illustrate the point, there's this incredible, beautiful pastime where Krishna, the object of, the central object of love, the root of all existence, is playing like a boy with his friends in the forest. And they become hungry. And they see that there are a group of brahmanas performing ritual sacrifices. And with the ritual sacrifices, food is offered as part of the sacrifice. And so Krishna says to his couple of his friends, could you go talk to those brahmanas? Ask them if they could, we're hungry, Krishna's over here, could you provide some food? And so the little boys, they do. And when you hear the descriptions of these leelas of Krishna, you get a picture of the sweetness of these boys, not only in their character, but also just in their appearance. They're absolutely adorable young boys playing in the forest, you know, that come up and they come up to these brahmanas and they say, dear respected brahmanas, you know, Krishna is here in the forest and he's become hungry and we're wondering if you could please provide some food for him. And the brahmanas are thinking very much in terms of their privilege and not in terms of their service, right? And so they're saying, who are these cowherd people? These are a lower rung on the social ladder, and they're little boys, so they're younger, which is also a lower rung on the social ladder. And they come up and they're interrupting our very important work here. It's said that they entirely ignored them, right? They didn't even.
Seems like Kali Yuga.
Yeah, that's Kali Yuga Brahmanas. They didn't even show them the respect of giving them an answer. And the boys went back to Krishna very disappointed. And then Krishna says, don't be disappointed, this is okay. But why don't you go to their wives and ask their wives if they might be able to help. Now the wives, they didn't have all of the Vedic training that their husbands had. They didn't know all the mantras. They hadn't practiced all the austerities. They didn't know all the rituals. They weren't nearly as learned as their husbands. But they had heard about Krishna and they had developed love for him. Right? They had developed this love for God, which is the highest purpose of all of those rituals and all of those austerities and all of the learning. So when these boys came, they said, Krishna is in the forest. He needs some food. They were like, stop everything. Right? Stop everything. And they rushed to prepare food and bring it, and they brought it out personally to him. And when they saw him, this love in the heart for Krishna, which is the ultimate dharma, the ultimate who we are underneath it all, they felt it profoundly, that love. And Krishna profoundly reciprocated with that love. And then the husbands caught on. They said, hold it. We missed the whole point. Sometimes they say it's like you don't see the forest because of the trees, right? Trees. They said, what is the use of all our learning and all our austerities and all our mantras and all our rituals and our position as brahmanas when we forgot the whole purpose of it, whereas our wives, they fully understood it, right? They're living it. And then they said, to hell with our austerities, to hell with our mantras, to hell with our, no, they have no. So that's a point where the ultimate literature, the conclusive literature, is saying this other literature is helpful, but never forget the point of it. Never forget where it's supposed to go. You can let go of those let go of those other temporary dharmas. You can turn them upside down. The child can become the teacher. The brahmana can become the, I don't want to say like the villain of the story, but like the brahmana could become the fool and the one that needs to learn something, right? So how does that apply in our own life? We live in a very tricky world. We don't live in a world that has this strong wisdom culture behind it. There are wisdom cultures interacting
Clearly
with
defined
our world.
roles, or yeah.
Yeah. There are wisdom cultures that are interacting with our world, and they do help sustain it. So whether it's coming from the Bible or from the Quran or from some other wisdom, there's aspects of wisdom that do help sustain our society. But like you take, like say America, right? What is it built on? It's built on freedom. I don't want to be restrained. I don't want to be restricted. I want to be free to do whatever I want to do. I don't want, like in Eastern cultures, it's common that you do the occupation of your family, right? And there's a brilliance in that, but there's also a sense of limitation in that, or a sense of lack of freedom. By the time we get to someone like in the generation that I grew up, when I was growing up, there's no question of doing what my family does or anything like that. Do what you want to do.
What was it of it?
Yeah. It's so freedom becomes like the higher principle, and it can lead to chaos, right? It can to a breakdown of harmony in society, and then same with nations and so on. So what is my dharma? People are going to ask that, right?
Yeah.
Now I'll tell you something. When someone really knows this whole Vedic background, it's not hard to look at a person, even just by their appearance. What to speak of if you ask them a few questions and find out about their history, their interests, their skills. It's not difficult to kind of tell where someone falls in, if someone is kind of very familiar with it.
Interesting.
But like, I'll give you an example. Like someone did ask me this question when we were at that festival, right? And I said, okay, well, tell me what you do for a living. And they said, I'm a yoga teacher. And I said, do you like teaching? And they said, yes. I said, do you make a lot of money doing it? They said, no. I said, tell me about your home. Well, actually, I kind of live right now like in a van, And I said, when you're in the van, do you feel like, oh my God, I need more stability than this? Or do you feel like when you lie down to go to sleep at night, are you happy? Are you in anxiety about your situation? They said, no, actually, I'm happy. Like, at least for now, I'm happy with my. I said, okay, well, you sound like a brahmana. You sound like a teacher by nature, right? You're not interested in, your joy in life is in knowledge and sharing knowledge. And you have a simplicity about you that's not looking for material comforts. And so it sounds to me like you're a teacher by nature, and that is a likely way that you should be serving. Now, but the teacher in our world isn't always honored the way that they are in the Vedic culture, where they're willing to live very simply, but people recognize their value and give donations to them so that they can sustain their life. And so in this world, you may be a teacher by nature, but you may not be properly reciprocated by society for that role.
Sorry, I got
I
disconnected.
noticed. We just
I
kept
missed
going.
the whole thing.
We kept going.
We kept going. Sorry.
No, it's great that I just don't know if it's recorded, because I am doing the recording. Hopefully it did.
It will. I'm sure it was recorded.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We go through this stuff on our podcast all the time.
Oh, cute.
That's true. You are the pro in this. Well, I will listen back to it, so I don't want to.
But to summarize what I was saying, it's not so hard to tell if someone is well educated in this culture and in these texts. Generally, it's not so hard to tell what someone's dharma is. But this world isn't always ready to reciprocate with that dharma. And sometimes we may find ourselves in a situation where I need to earn, and society's not opening those doors for me necessarily, or not reciprocating with that role. And so we may have to take up duties that are less natural to us. That's okay. It's not ideal, but it's okay, as long as we can keep the focus on uncovering that eternal Dharma,
Right.
right? As long as we can.
Yes, that's
And that can especially be done through practices that are directly related to that eternal Dharma. So I may be a Brahmana by nature, but I have to live like a Vaishya. I may be a teacher by nature, a simple living person by nature, but in order just to survive in this world that doesn't recognize my gifts, I might have to go out and get a job in finance or something like that, which is a very different world. But if while doing that, I have a focus on that eternal Dharma, I wake up early in the morning and I read Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita, and I take up certain sadhana practices in my life, and so on. Yeah, I could go on and on, but
Yeah.
despite the external circumstances not being ideal, my internal life can, and the blessings of certain practices and so on can overpower that lack that's there, that
It's
less
that
than ideal.
the internal life, keeping that going when it's not quite aligning is,
That's right.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, very, very important. Yeah.
just basically, this is what Raghunath says, right? Make the main thing the main thing.
That's exactly what he means when he says that. Keep the main thing the main thing. Right? Yeah. Yes.
Wow. Oh, Bashak. All right. I think you froze again, Bashak.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
He looks happy though.
He does look, are you happy, Bashak? Maybe that's a clue that we have to
Okay.
wrap things up, I think. Yeah. Hopefully she's been able to record this and
I
maybe
think
she'll
so.
come back. Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you have any trouble, you bring me back. I'll be happy to come
Oh,
back.
this has been absolutely,
Beautiful.
Oh, here's Bashak.
Uh,
Bashak, perhaps if you turn off your camera, we'll be able to hear you.
so one last question, and we have
Yeah.
ton of. Did I?
We're
okay.
having a little trouble hearing you.
All right. I think we probably should wind up just for everybody's
Okay.
time and
We'll
sake,
take that
right?
question
Yeah.
another time.
Yeah. Oh, can you hear us now, Bashak?
I don't think I've ever had this much internet issues in any episode, and I wonder
Okay.
why. And this is the one episode that I was so looking forward to. I'm sorry about that.
Well, it's good. Sounds good now. So you had
Yes.
one last question?
You had one last
I
question?
do actually. One last question before we close, and there's millions of them. We need to bring you back. But so how does one, what personal practices that you suggest for one to keep that inner connection to their Dharma?
Well, if you would ask me that question a week ago, I might have answered it a little bit different, but you've given me an opportunity to plug something actually. Because I just kicked something off this week, which I began promoting it, putting it out there this week, but it'll begin this coming Monday. And that is studying Bhagavad Gita every day. All right. I think
I signed up.
I know, yeah.
I will too.
Let's
Wonderful.
go, everybody.
Maybe in the description of this podcast, you could share the link.
Absolutely.
It's
Yes.
there's also will be an Instagram page that's called Gita Collective, GITA Collective, Gita Collective on Instagram. Or there's a link that you can join a WhatsApp group. But the idea is, I broke in the Bhagavad Gita up into 30 sections. There's 700 verses total. So 30 sections, you read one section per day, which is only 10 or 15 minutes. And I will daily on the WhatsApp group provide different ways to see connections or draw out the themes that are being spoken about, showing how it's all tying together, showing the the message and how it's progressing. So that hopefully, I know a lot of times when people pick up a book like that, it's like, this is really interesting, but I don't quite see where it's going, or why is it talking about that? Or they may not understand the context, or so they're not getting the full message. I'll be helping with that on a daily basis. If you read Bhagavad Gita every day, it's a really great place to start.
Yes,
Maybe
yes,
that's a good one.
That's
I
amazing.
attest to that.
Okay.
Okay.
That's beautiful.
Everyone,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Basak. Thank you, Kate.
thank
Good luck
you.
with your podcast. I really appreciate the service that you're doing through it.
Thank you.
you
We
so much.
appreciate you.
Yes, so
Kate,
much.
would you like to
Yes.
start the
Oh,
music
yes,
and
we
then
do.
we say goodbye to our listeners?
Yeah, this has been the day of, let's try to get the
Technical
stuff
issues.
going. Technical issues. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much. That
Bye,
was incredible.
everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Kaustubha. Thank you,
Thank you,
Kate.
Kaustubha.
See you soon.